Hi. In this video, I want to talk about something I faced in my life that involved going from a broke waitress to accomplishing basically my dreams. The point would be then goal setting because that is the tool that I found worked in order to get myself moving to better myself and my life. Um, I found that the situation I was in when I realized this was one where I was living a life of self-limitation. I was broke. I had very little a patchwork of job history. I had failed out of school, and didn't have my driver's license, so I was dependent on my husband at the time to get me around. It was as if I had taken myself, my personality, my character, and who I was, and created a little tiny box out of it. Just put myself in that box. And that box was self-limitation. Not challenging my nature, not challenging my weaknesses, just accepting them and allowing that to create a life that is less than best for me and anybody around me. Because when you're living like that, I mean, you're also your words and your actions will ripple that out into those around you as if it were acceptable, kind of promoting that way of living, when in fact it's completely unacceptable. And I was lucky enough to meet an online community that taught me how to open my eyes and see that this little box of self-limitation is actually imaginary. It's smoke and mirrors. It exists only in my mind, nowhere else. I did have the reinforcement of society basically telling me that I was also as limited, being that, I failed out of school, I couldn't get a good job. I just felt that, I believed it. I believed what society was telling me and what my experiences, the way they made me feel. If you work somewhere and you get bad feedback, or you struggle in the job, or you don't get a promotion, I took those things, or failing out of school. I took the experience that I had within those things and lived it out as if that experience was who I was, instead of challenging that experience, smashing down the box and breaking down walls, which is what we all are capable of doing. For me, the magic key was, it was self-empowerment, but the tool that I used was goal setting. And I didn't know at the time what the big goal of my life was going to be. But I did know that I wanted to make my life better than it was currently. And for me, the path that I chose was the road well traveled. If I went back and had to do it again, I might have chose something different, but it's all I knew at the time. So that meant going back to school, getting a good job, getting more money so that I could do more with my life. And in order to do that, I had to make short, medium, and long-term goals. I made a video about money, so I'm not going to touch so much on that here, but I made a video about money and goals in a YouTube video that I'll link to in this box, the information box below. So the goals that I'm talking about in this video are more practical goals in terms of choices and actually feats to accomplish. For me, the first one was getting my driver's license. That time I knew I had this kind of path forming in my mind, and I was seeing the steps that would be necessary to take to accomplish step by step, even though I didn't know at that time what the final goal would be. So I arranged myself so that I could get the driver's license, which you would think might be easy, but when you don't have a driver's license and you're living way out in farmlands, it was just like a bundle of obstacles in terms of finding people to help me practice and getting all the paperwork in order and getting to the places and whatnot, and going through taking the test. And so it was step by step to get to the first goal, the short-term goal of getting the driver's license, which once I had, opened me up to a lot more things, like being able to drive to different jobs. I had to before limit myself to jobs that were near or around where my husband was working so that we could go into work together. And so getting my driver's license opened up more job potentials. But I knew that my medium-term goal was getting my university degree, because of the reason why I chose that was because I had a patchwork history of working in 2 different countries and lots of short-term employment. So I knew that a degree would help me get a better job. And that was a whole other feat to accomplish because I could not afford school in the US. It's just, I don't know how people do it. I was unwilling to go into that debt. To me, it was just not an option because debt is a real, for real limitation. It's not an imaginary limitation. It is something that you have to deal with and physically take the time to work through. So what I decided was the best option for me, being that I'm Canadian, was to go back to school in Canada. That is complicated when you have a life in one country and you're going to school in another country and you're married, and so you have responsibilities to people. And so I managed to go and get all. I also had a patchwork history of schooling, so I had to go back. I had gone to school in different states and different countries. I had to physically visit all the locations to get the academic history to put together the application to even be accepted into university. And even that's difficult with working and sharing a car and, having to travel around. But little by little, I began to learn it's all about being able to spot opportunities. So, that's a big insight that really helped me in my life, was spotting opportunities and just jumping on them. And this is where having your goal in your mind opens up opportunities, because if you know what you're working towards, then you know opportunities to look out for. Even if it's as small as, I need a way to get to this state from that state. How am I going to get there? When? Then something opens up in your life and you're like, aha, that's how I'm going to do it. And you do that. So you don't always know how the path is going to go. But the thing is that you're like in this position of readiness, of just, you just looking, and then boom, you recognize something, you go for it. So I ended up going back to school in Canada and doing a commute where I would travel home on the weekends or during my breaks, and, juggling exams and paper writing and being married, and also finding employment where I was for part of the year in Canada, for part of the year in the US, and having to find these odd jobs like tutoring and helping old people clean their house or take care of them, bartending, working summer jobs. So, I had to coordinate the traveling and because the school for me was full time because I wanted to get it done as soon as possible. So you have to coordinate juggling all these different objects, kind of like, fitting them together into a puzzle that you can actually do. At the same time studying and working through a degree. So I got through the university degree, and my next goal was that I wanted to be more credible in the system, because I knew that a woman in her 30s with only waitressing, there's nothing wrong with that, but for the path that I had chosen, I didn't see that as being something beneficial to me. I wanted jobs that would show my ability to be responsible, take on more responsibilities, and just jobs that would look good, basically, in the system. And I got a job in the US, but the thing is, I got divorced. So I had to, I decided to move back to Canada, where I would have more of a network, more connections, and I didn't really have anybody. I had nothing left in the US to keep me there. I didn't have a close group of friends or anything like that, or a great job. So I moved back to Canada and had to still walk that goal of getting a good job, which I did. Because I had the degree, I was able to get a job that's a bit above entry level. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not had the degree. What I learned was that degrees are like a dime a dozen these days. And even jobs where, generation or less ago, you could get them. Nowadays, you need a degree for almost anything. Everybody in my department had a degree. And so the degree allowed me to get a better job and save up the money, which was a process in itself. But it put me in a position where I was now just primed for the next thing. Next thing that opened up was the opportunity to move to Africa and work with a group of people who are wanting to change the world, which is something that was always very important to me. Not satisfied my own life, I also wasn't satisfied with the state of the world, and what was meaningful for me would be to directly work with a group of people who are looking to also find opportunities to be able to do something about that. A lot of that involves personal development. So along the whole process of goal setting and accomplishing, I was being aware of who I was in these moments and how I was growing and how I was looking at challenges and finding my weaknesses. I would literally find my weakness and place myself into a situation where that weakness was amplified. So when I went back to school, I'm more the type who would probably, my family was shocked when I chose political science, because I'm more the type that would go into an arts or some kind of more liberal type program. But I knew that it was my weakness to study and be kind of type A personality. So I placed myself in that environment that would accentuate my weaknesses so that I could see them and work through them. And it was hard. The same thing with working. You'd more likely see me at an animal shelter or kind of like a really laid back coffee shop. Instead, I placed myself in the bank, and the whole time I was working there was like challenging everything of me and really working with feeling like a failure a lot of the time, because everything that I was doing at work was stuff that I had no skills in. And instead of getting discouraged, though, I would just remind myself that I'm working on strengthening my weaknesses. So working at the bank is what brought my process through to my financial process, to get myself set up to be able to come to Africa and stay for a period of time and support myself while I'm here, and not leave any debts or anything like that back home. So now I'm at a point where I am getting back into that primed position where I'm just looking for opportunities while I'm here, because this is like a creation process where you are creating your path as you go. There will be periods of uncertainty, periods of discouragement, and periods of difficulty. But the amazing thing is that during all of that, if you take the reins in your life and who you are, you can use every single one of those moments to develop yourself into somebody who will be ready for the next step when and as it opens up. So now my position here in Africa, I'm just taking care of myself. I'm trying tons of new things. I'm putting myself out there and getting myself back into that position, like ready to spring, so that when I see the next thing that I can do and that I know I would either challenge me or I would be good at it, I'm going to be ready. So that's where I am now. I'll give an update as things open up. I just wanted to share my process with what helped me move my life forward, challenge myself, and grow. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.